I'd love to introduce tonight our guest speaker, Gillian Struble from the LSU Ag Center. Is an entomologist, and she's very kindly agreed to present to us this evening for LMNA Nature Notes. Thank you, Gillian. Whenever you're ready, please
Yeah,
begin.
thank you guys for having me. Let me figure out here. Let me share my screen. Um, all right, can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So I'm super excited to have the opportunity to talk to you guys today. My name is Jillian. You can call me Jill. I'm currently a student at LSU, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get right into this, y'all. So today we're talking about the wonderful world of entomology. So, what is it to be an entomologist? That's probably one of the first questions my parents asked when I said I was going to study entomology. So, entomologists, as you guys may know, study arthropods and insects. Whenever people say that, they typically imagine the entomologist out into the field, running around, collecting new bugs and creeping around different forests and pinning them and all that other stuff, figuring out the ecology. And while, yes, that is a lot of people's jobs,
Okay.
that's not every entomologist's jobs. So entomology spans far and wide. There's pest management, there's which deals with like pesticides, forensics, which is super important. Think of like Dr. Hodgins from Bones, if you ever watched that show. Biochemistry and molecular biology is a big field to figure out more about how insects work at the cellular level, as well as medical and veterinary importance for figuring out how insects can spread disease. So the big thing to take away from this presentation is that no matter who you are, what you do, entomology impacts everyone, and there's a space for you within the entomology field. So what put me on this path? So I'm originally from southern Kansas, so we grew a lot of wheat, and that's probably where my entomology experiences are rooted from. We dealt a lot with ag, we dealt with a lot of pests and a lot of pesticides. So that's kind of where my beginnings start. In high school, I studied entomology my senior year, so I've been an entomologist for about 6 years now. I originally started my undergraduate studies at Oklahoma State University trying to become a medical pathologist. I then realized that I like talking way too much to be a medical pathologist because all you do as a pathologist is sit in a room with your microscope, and I love a good microscope, but I love talking way, way more. So I'm mostly passionate about teaching and outreach within entomology. I also was a undergraduate researcher for 3 years and conducted studies in insect immune systems. You can see me there whenever I was younger and had shorter hair. The guy next to me there with the birthday cake was my mentor. His name was Bruce. He was a great guy. And in December 2025, I graduated with 2 degrees in microbiology and entomology. So that's kind of how I started with my path of entomology. I currently study with Dr. Hernandez in the toxicology lab at LSU Ag Center. And I study potential molecular targets for a future insecticide. Something that I want to quickly talk about to show how entomology impacts more than what you may think it does is this little Drosophila here who died of a fungal infection. So back in the 90s, these entomologists were studying the toll receptor gene. So what they thought toll did whenever they were studying it was to do with development. What they then realized was that whenever they knocked down that gene, the adults' flies died of infection at a way, way higher rate. So this is what caused us to learn about the toll receptor in the immune system. That is what binds to pathogens to allow the immune system to attack it. And not only that, but that led to the discovery of the toll-like receptor in humans, which is now a really big drug target for a lot of different new drugs. So all that to say that entomology is not just what you may think it is. Entomology spans far and wide as to how much it impacts and what it impacts. So the next question my parents asked me when I said I was going to be an entomologist is, why the heck are you studying entomology? Arthropods are the most diverse group of animals on the planet. So They are everywhere. They impact every ecosystem. You can see here in my pictures, that is a death feigning beetle. They walk across the desert in the hottest of suns. Then you have the isopod here. This is not the isopod that we're used to seeing, but it's living at the bottom of the ocean. And this is a Gryloblattodea, which is a type of insect, and it is walking on ice. So insects are everywhere. You can see here a big graph of how much arthropods there are truly and diversity-wise. So plants, you know, that's the next biggest thing with 350,000. Arthropods make up 1.2 million of all described species known on Earth. So arthropods are pretty prolific in our society. They make up about 80% of all animal species. So if you're just to cut out this graph and make it animals, 80% of them are arthropods. So yeah, they fill a lot of niches in our environment, which means that scientists, the entomologists, fill a lot of niches within science. So to talk about arthropods, we need a quick refresher probably on what an arthropod is. Arthropods have an exoskeleton that's made of chitin that they molt in order to grow. You can see here this awesome picture of a grasshopper molting in order to grow, and that it's exoskeleton here. They also have segmented bodies. You can see on my grasshopper picture here in the right side, there's 3 segments for a grasshopper, and they have jointed appendages. So you can see on its little leg here that it's able to move its leg, and it has the joints in between its legs. So within arthropods, there is a lot of different classes and 5 main subphylums. But unfortunately, trilobites are extinct, so 4 main subphylums. The ones that I have time to talk about today are going to be Arachnida, which is our spiders, our scorpions, our mites, Myripodia, which is our centipedes and millipedes, crustacean, which I'm going to talk about Malacostraca specifically, and obviously insects, get into the depth of it. So first is Myriapoda. So this is the group that contains centipedes and millipedes. So our centipedes here are known for being a little bit more aggressive and fast. So they have these things called toxognaths or venom claws at the front of their face that they can use to envenomate prey. So they use it to hunt. And then you have Diplopoda, which is our millipedes that fill a completely different ecological niche where they are decomposers. They feed on dead and decaying plant matter. They're pretty pacifists, so they don't go out for a fight. They don't have any defense mechanisms besides just curling up into a ball. And some of them can spray a stinky chemical spray that can sometimes be toxic, but their biggest defense is just curling up into a ball. The way you can tell them apart is that centipedes, they're a little bit more flat, more like a snake-like, I would say, and its legs are coming out the side of it. I think if I were to characterize them, that they look a little bit more scary. And then millipedes are a lot more segments, and they are more rounded like a worm. So their legs are kind of hidden underneath their bodies. Another way, if you were to get close enough to these guys, is to see that your centipedes, they only have 1 set of legs. So just the 2 on one on each side for each of those body segments. And our Diplopoda have 2 legs for each segment. Pretty cool things. Next is Malacostraca, which is everyone's favorite in Louisiana, makes us famous. They have 3 body segments and 2 pairs of antennae. Obviously, we use them a lot for our seafood boils around here. We got a nice picture of a crawfish boil up there. These guys include our crawfish, our crabs, our shrimp, our lobsters. It also includes krill, and my favorite, isopods. Those are what we call roly-polies most of the time, or pill bugs, depending on where you're from. There's obviously some isopods that live underwater, but this is the only group of crustaceans that are able to live completely terrestrial. So that makes isopods pretty cool. Next, we're getting into arachnids, which is one of my favorite groups. I think that they are some of the coolest species. A lot of times the arachnids are confused with insects, but evolutionarily on our phylogenical tree here, you can see that of the groups I'm talking about, they're arguably one of the furthest ones away. So pretty interesting. they only have two body segments. So they have the first one, which includes like their head, their face, their mouths, and then they have their abdomen section. So within the many, many groups of arachnids that I recommend you look up, I'm going to be talking about three of them. I'm going to talk about Opiliones, Acari, and Araneae. So Opiliones, they're harvestmen or daddy longlegs. They're the first of the daddy longlegs that I'm going to talk about today. They have a fused body and head, so it kind of just looks like a circle on long stilts. They have 8 legs like a spider, but they only walk on 6 of them. They use the other 2 outstretched in front of them as a feeler. So they feel around their environment with those 2 front legs. They're very commonly confused with spiders, probably because of the 8 legs thing. You know, you see something with 8 legs, you're not all that curious as to whether it's a Opiliones or if it's a spider, but they're different. They have no silk glands, which is different than spiders. So they don't have the ability to build any sort of web. And they have this awesome ability of dropping their legs. And I have a little video here that I wanted to show you guys because it's pretty interesting. It's like how a lizard drops their tail if they get caught by their tail. Mm-hmm. It's similar like that. So I'm going to skip ahead here to 140, I believe. Okay, we're going to go. Wow. Wow. All right, so I thought that was a pretty cool video on how they kind of walk and how they can lose their legs, and it's all fine. Another last thing I want to talk about with Opiliones is a myth that daddy longlegs have the most medically important venom, but their mouth parts are too small to be able to bite you. And I hate to break it to y'all, but that is such a big myth. They don't even have venom. They're detrivores, so they just eat decaying material. They also eat like small insects. They're scavengers a little bit. So they don't have a reason to have venom. So unfortunately, it's not entirely true about the whole venom thing of daddy longlegs having the most important venom that could kill you instantly. Ooh. There we go. Next, I'm going to talk about Acari, which is our mites, which mites includes ticks. There's 54,000 species of mites, which is an incredible number with more to still be discovered because most mites are too small to see with our naked eye. So ticks are within the parasitiforms, which is a part of mites. There's acariforms and parasitiforms. They're within parasitiforms in the order Exotidae. They're obviously very medically important and very prolific here. There has also been a large abundance of ticks right now. I don't know if you guys know why, but the reason is not because people are dropping them out of planes. That is a common myth that we hear every day, is that people are dropping ticks out of planes. But that's not the case. It's actually because in the north, the winter was too mild this year to kill them off. So they were able to reproduce at a very, very high level. And we have a lot of them now, which is not very fun. But while people focus a lot on ticks because of how medically important they are, there is still a lot of other mites that should be studied further because they're everywhere. They span from the very tops of mountains to the very bottom of oceans, as well as on us, like our eyelash mites. So mites are pretty cool little creatures. Unfortunately, not very many people study them. Next is Araneae, which is our spiders. And I know not everyone here is a spiders fan. I used to also not like spiders at all, but I took a college course and I realized how awesome they are, how important they are, and now I kind of like them. I'm a spider fan. So I'm going to first talk about my favorite, which is the jumping spiders. They're very charismatic. They have these big eyes that are like binoculars that allow them to see very well. They're active hunters in the daytime, so they jump around from leaf to leaf or from post to post in order to hunt. And I just think that they're kind of cute. They have these nice little eyelashes, and they also can recognize people. So if you feed them or if you walk past them a lot, they're commonly used as pets for that reason because they can recognize you. Next is the wolf spider. Wolf spiders are very similar to our jumping spiders. They have those binocular eyes as well. The difference is that they're bigger, they don't jump, instead they run really fast, and they're found at nighttime. So they're also very good moms. They carry their babies on their backs until they're ready to go off into the world on their own, which makes them pretty cool, I think. You know, anything that has a good mom, I'm a fan of. So the next one I'm going to talk about is cellar spiders, which is our daddy long legs number 2. There's 3 in this presentation, so just be prepared for that. Cellar spiders, you can often find them in like the corners of your houses or in your basement. They sit there, they enjoy the humid areas, and they will eat all your insects within your house. I used to have them in the house that I was living at whenever I was in between here and my OSU degree. And I had quite a few of them in my house. I recommend keeping them. I try to limit the population to 2 in my house, but they do a very good job at keeping away your insects in your house. The next one I'm talking about is orb weavers. Orb weavers are great to have in your gardens if you have a garden. They are the ones that build those ornate webs that sit in the morning and they catch the dewdrops, and they're very beautiful most of the time. A lot of these orb weavers, this is the golden orb weaver. They're a gorgeous species, and they do eat a lot of your insects. So keep them around in your gardens if you have them. While there is so many more spiders that I would love to talk about, I need to start talking about the medically important ones. But I recommend you guys stay curious about them. Spiders in general eat 400 to 800 million tons of insects in a year. So they're very important for that reason of controlling pest species and other insects. They're important in our ecosystems. But moving on to our medically important species, we have the black widow and the brown recluse. So more than often, whenever there is a clinically confirmed case of a spider bite, it is coming from a black widow. But you have to keep in mind that black widows are not out to get you. They're web sitters, so they sit in a web and they wait for their prey to come. So they're not going to come out of their web to come and chase you. Honestly, spiders in general don't want to bite you because their venom is not meant for you. Their venom most of the time doesn't affect humans. Even black widows, it is very rare for a case of envenomation to cause fatality in a healthy adult. Most of the time, anything that causes fatalities from a spider is a young child or someone who's immunocompromised. So biting for them typically would mean that they're losing out on their next meal because their venom is depleted and the energy it takes to regain all that venom, they won't have it in time for the next meal to come around. So just keep that in mind anytime you're near spiders. Spiders don't want to bite you. They're not out to get you. They may look scary because of our preconceived notions, but they're not. And then lastly is the brown recluse, and that's one of my favorites because it's so misunderstood. Brown recluses are, unlike the black widow, they do not send the web, so they are active, but they're not hunting. They're scavengers. So they're looking around for dead things to eat. They're not looking for a live thing, and spiders can't eat us anyways, so why would they want to come after us? In brown recluses, only 7 fatalities have been reported in the past 26 years, and even that might be an overshot because the brown recluse bite is very similar to other skin infections, such as a staph infection. So to tell the difference is very hard for a normal person. And think of your doctors. How many doctors do you know have the medical training and the entomological training to see if this little spider that a person brings into the doctor's office is actually a brown recluse, and if it's actually large enough, because the spider has to be a certain size in order for them to be able to bite through your skin. So unfortunately, it's unknown as to how many brown recluse bites actually happen and how many of them are actually medically important. But I'm going to have a little quiz here. If you guys are squeamish, this might not be for you. You might want to turn away. But I wanted to show you how similar those are. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to turn away if you need to. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So we're going to have a question here. Which one is staph and which one is a brown recluse bite? If anyone has an answer, feel free to go ahead and say it. Anyone?
Oh, they're currently muted. I've just asked them to unmute themselves if they're going to talk. Sorry.
You're fine.
I would say the one on the left is the spider bite.
The one on the left? Okay. Anyone have any conflicting ideas to that?
I was thinking the one on the right because I've
The one
always
on the
heard
right?
about the red circle,
Okay.
an insect bite.
Understood. So the one on the left is a Google image of a staph infection. The one on the right is a Google image of a brown recluse. And because these guys, the brown recluse bite and a staph infection, have such similar symptoms, they're very often confused, especially just by the normal people without expertise. I mean, I couldn't really tell the difference if I was bitten by a spider versus if I had a staph infection. And sometimes what might end up happening is that you have a mosquito bite or another bug bite, or you do get bit by a spider and you itch it, and that itching causes a staph infection. It's pretty unsure as to how many brown recluse bites are actually medically significant. So, all I have to say, spiders, not all that dangerous. And now finally, I'm going to talk about insects, which is everyone's favorite. These are the most diverse of all the arthropods. They're known for having 6 legs, the 1 pair of antennae, 3 body parts, which are head, thorax, and abdomen, and most of them have 1 to 2 sets of wings. Not all of them have wings, like fleas, they don't have wings, but most do. First, I'm going to talk about Coleoptera. So Coleoptera is our beetles. These are the most diverse of all insects. If you were to throw all the species on Earth into a paper bag, there is a 1 in 4 chance that you're going to grab out a beetle. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about how diverse Coleoptera is. They are known for having elytra. You can see here on my ladybug image, they have this hard exterior wing, and then the inner wing is the membranous wing that they use to fly. And since these guys are so diverse, they fill so many different ecological niches. They are pollinators, they are pests, they are predators, they are water insects, they are decomposers. They literally fill almost any niche that you can think of. A pest that I want to talk about, obviously there's many beetle pests, but the one I want to talk about is the emerald ash borer. It is currently in Louisiana. They are known to destroy and kill trees. So not only does this have an ecological impact, but it impacts our lumber industry because once you are identified to have the emerald ash borer in your parish or your county, depending on where you're from, you can no longer sell wood outside of that area. This is why it's important. While you'll see signs that say buy where you, or burn where you buy. So if you're buying wood from an area, or if you're cutting down wood from an area, you should be burning it only in that area to prevent the spread of these guys. And there's quite a few beneficial insects within Coleoptera. Ladybug obviously is a great one for gardens. It eats your aphids. But the one that I like to talk about the most is dung beetles, because who doesn't want to talk about poop? So these guys lay their eggs in the poop to grow their young. There's 3 different types. There is the rollers, the tunnelers, and dwellers. This guy down here is, I cannot pronounce the name, but it's the Hecate species. They are tunnelers, and they're native in Louisiana. Dung beetles are very important for our ecosystem because they clean our ecosystem and rid it of waste and recycle the nutrients. I'm going to talk about what the difference between rollers, tunnelers, and dwellers are really quick. Rollers are the ones that are the most charismatic, the ones that people know because they roll the big balls of poop across the land, and then they bury it and lay their eggs. Tunnelers are a little bit different. They still tunnel underground with the poop, but they don't roll it up in the balls first. They just go right underneath the dung pat. And then you have the dwellers, who are the more lazy. They don't do anything crazy with it. They just lay their eggs in there and they use it. So not only are these guys important for the recycling of our nutrients, but it's important for reducing our pests. So fly species and our dung beetles are competing in order to get to these dung pads to raise their young. So if we have beetles that are getting rid of our dung pads and using them, flies can't use them. Unfortunately, though, dung beetles are a little bit more susceptible to pesticides than flies are. So whenever we're spraying all these pesticides to get rid of flies, not only are we reducing fly populations, but we're getting rid of our native dung beetles that are natural competitors for these guys. Next, I want to talk about Hymenoptera. These are the bees, ants, and wasps, and they're the second place for the most species. I used to have a friend at Oklahoma State that would argue for hours that these guys actually are the most diverse. It's just that we haven't discovered them all yet. So however you feel about it, whichever one you want to believe is the first place, I'll let you believe it. These guys are important for pollination. Obviously, we have bees, but wasps are also important pollinators. We love our wasps too. And not only that, they're also very important for biocontrol methods. In Brazil, especially, they use parasitic wasps and raise them and then release them into agricultural practices to rid them of all these different small pests like caterpillars, aphids, you name it. They have a Hymenoptera species to go with it. I want to talk about some native bees. So we have a whole bunch of beautiful native bees here that do wonderful things for our ecosystem. They're all pretty much pollinators. They're wonderful, and we need to appreciate them more. You'll notice one name is off this list, and that would be the honeybee. Honeybees are not native. Honeybees are, they're very important for agricultural product of honey. So they produce honey, but outside of that, they are actually very damaging to our environment, and they're invasive. They're from Europe. The fact that there's so many different state insects is crazy to me, but there are a lot of different state insects. And they are a competitor for our native bees, which is unfortunate, and they decline our native bee population. So whenever you hear save the bees, think of these guys, not our honeybees, because the honeybees, they don't need to be saved. They're the same as cattle in my mind, at least. Another one I want to talk about is the tarantula hawk wasp, because I think that they are one of the coolest species of wasps. They're this beautiful blue color. They're like black to blue shift, and they have these bright orange wings. And they're parasitic wasp of spiders, specifically tarantulas. So they're going to paralyze those spiders, drag it back to their den and lay their eggs in it, and the eggs will grow into larvae and mature within these spiders and eat them. So they're really cool. They're very large. Another fact to think about whenever you're thinking about wasps and bees is that only the females have stingers. So if you're getting stung, it's only the females. The males do not have stingers. But anyways, these guys, they are very good parasitic wasps, and they're very beautiful. They are found in Louisiana, specifically mostly on the western side of the Mississippi River. And these guys are also known for having one of the most painful stings. This guy named Schmidt, he created a sting index. So he was an entomologist that decided to go out and get stung by a whole load of different Hymenoptera. I can say as an entomologist, I will not be signing up for that job. That does not sound like fun. But he found that the tarantula hawk wasp had one of the highest pain indexes of all of the Hymenoptera. But it only lasts for 5 minutes. So if you do get stung, you know, it's going to hurt like heck for 5 minutes and then you'll be okay. Next, on the opposite side of the spectrum, because the tarantula hawk wasp is one of the larger species of wasps, is fairy fly. A fairy fly is a parasitic wasp as well, but they are tiny. Some of them can't even be seen with the naked eye. And they fly using these feather wings. So they have these little hairs coming off of their wings to increase the surface area, because otherwise their wings would be too small to generate lift. So they are absolutely tiny, but they're parasitic wasps, and that's pretty cool. Next, I'm going to talk about Diptera. So Diptera is true flies. And something I want to mention is about naming conventions. So as you see here, it's called a fairy fly, but it's not a fly. And you'll see that a lot with insects because naming is just so silly within the entomological world. A way that I learned to know the difference between what is a true fly, true bug, like a ladybug is not a bug, a fairy fly is not a fly, is that if the two words are combined together, like fairy fly, it's not a true fly. But if it's like a bee fly, or if it is a water bug, and they're two separate words, they are within that family. So just something to think about as we're moving forward. So Diptera are our true flies. They only have one set of wing. You can see here on this crane fly, which the crane fly is daddy long legs number 3. Naming convention for common names is a little silly too. But they only have one set of true wings. The second wing is a club-looking thing that's used as a gyroscope as they fly to increase stability. There's 2 different types of Diptera. There is the Nematocera, which is our crane flies, our midges, and mosquitoes. They're characterized by being more thin, delicate looking, as well as most of the time having a water stage within their development. And then the other group is our Brachycera, which are what you would imagine a typical fly to look like. This is a bee fly. It's a bee mimic, so it's mimicking the look of a bee so that it can get protection from the fact that bees can sting and it cannot. So it is also a pollinator. Most flies are pollinators. This down here is a traditional housefly, I believe. So you'll see a lot of them around. Flies not only are pollinators, though, they're also pests. Right now, the New World screwworm is coming around. It's found in Texas right now. They're bad ag pests. They are very destructive to our ag industry. So not only are Diptera good, they're also bad. But speaking of the good and the bad, mosquitoes. I know mosquitoes are very medically important. Everyone kind of hates them. They're biting me like crazy. I've only been here for 3 months, and I swear I'm more mosquito bite than I am human at this point. But all that to say, they are still very important in our ecosystems. They are pollinators. The females drink blood only to be able to reproduce and lay eggs. They need the iron and the protein from our blood. But whenever they're not biting us, they're actually pollinators. The males are only pollinators. They are not able to bite humans. So whenever you're getting bit, you're only getting bit by the females. These guys not only are pollinators, but as larvae, these guys down here, these little weird looking string type things, those are the larvae of mosquitoes, and they're environmental filters. So they'll eat algae, debris, microorganisms floating through the water and clean the water systems. So they're very important for that fact. And lastly, think of how many mosquitoes there must be in Louisiana alone. The mosquito population is to the point that it has so much biomass that getting rid of them would destroy a lot of different ecosystems because our ecosystems rely on them for food. So as larvae, they feed like dragonfly larvae, they feed fish, they feed toads, they feed anything that you can find in the water system pretty much. And as adults, they also feed adult dragonflies, and they feed bats and birds and lizards. So these guys are what's feeding our ecosystems. Despite the fact that we don't like them, we kind of need them. Next is Hemiptera. So these are true bugs. So whenever you hear ladybugs, they're not ladybugs, they're ladybugs. These are the true bugs. They're characterized by having a piercing, sucking mouth part. You can see here in this top right image, you can kind of see the straw coming out. That's what they use to suck up a lot of the food that they're eating. There's a lot of pests associated with our true bugs. Not all of them are pests, but a lot of associated pests in this group. This is the brown marmorated stink bug and the aphid. They're agricultural pests. And this is the bed bug. No one likes having bed bugs. And then the top right image that I was showing, that is a kissing bug. And kissing bugs spread Chagas disease. So these two are also medically significant. But a good version of the bugs is the wheel bug. It's one of my favorites. They can bite, but they're generally very docile, and they're known as a garden defender. So as a nymph, they have this bright red body and black legs. You can often see them in the summertime, like right before watermelon season. That's how I always remember them coming out. And then as adults, they turn gray, this like gray color with bright red antenna, and you can see again that mouth part that's coming out. And they're characterized by this huge wheel, hence the name wheel bug, on the back of their thorax. And this guy right here, he's eating a Japanese beetle. Japanese beetles are very bad for the ecosystem. They're invasive. So these guys are really good to keep around. If you have them in your garden, leave them there because they're doing a lot of work for you. Next is Lepidoptera. Lepidoptera is our butterflies and our moths. They have 4 wings with scales. You can see it close up here. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, insects with scales, that's crazy. But these guys, their wings are coated in the scale, and they're there evolutionary, believed to be there because if a butterfly flies into the nest of a spider, they can shed those scales off and continue to fly away without getting stuck. So that's a pretty good reason to have scales on your wings, I believe. They're also known to have a proboscis to feed from, so that's how they feed from flowers, is they release this curled up proboscis and they suck up the nectar. There's a lot of pest species. The one of the most importance is the fall armyworm. So the fall armyworm is a large pest in the agricultural industry. So that's what their caterpillars look like, and that is what their adults look like. In 2018, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations estimated 18 million tons of corn are lost annually from the fall armyworm. So they're doing a lot of pest work that we don't really want them around for. And then I wanted to bring in a butterfly because they're beautiful. They're very, very beautiful insects. This one up here is one of my favorites. It's the red spotted purple. And I just think their naming is really funny because they are neither red nor purple. So whoever was in charge of naming that one was probably colorblind. Another one I want to talk about is the snowberry clearwing. So these guys are really interesting because they're a moth that mimics a bee and a hummingbird at the same time. You can see the bee because of their black and yellow stripes, and they have these center patches on their wings that are lacking scales that make them clear. And how they mimic the hummingbird is by flying like a hummingbird. Like they have the same flight pattern as a hummingbird, and their wings make the humming noise like a hummingbird. And you can see here at the end of its abdomen, this little tail piece, it floats out like a hummingbird does as well. They're obviously very important pollinators, as most moths and butterflies are. But I just think they're very beautiful moths to have around. Lastly, I'm going to talk about Odonata. Odonata is our dragonflies and our damselflies. They are predators in both stages, as a nymph, which lives in the water, and as adults, which fly. They're also known as very ancient insects in the phylogeny. So you can see here where Odonata is in comparison to where the rest of the groups are that we're talking about, Diptera being the most recent. A way that I always learned how to tell just based off of looking at an insect how old it is phylogenetically is by how many veins in its wings they have. So you can see here on the dragonfly picture in the bottom, there's a whole bunch of cross veins and little tiny cells within their wings. The older the insect is, the more veins that they have within their wings. That's how I learned it, at least, and it seems to be true for most groups. This one down here is our green darner. They're very prevalent in Louisiana, as well as the ebony jewelwing. You can kind of tell the difference between adults, between the adult dragonfly and damselflies, because the dragonflies are a little bit more large and thick, and their wings are laid out flat. So they lay out in a straight line, versus damselflies most of the time lay their wings back behind their backs. And they're a little bit more delicate looking and more small, petite. As water stages, you can tell the difference. The left image on the top is a dragonfly, and the right image is a damselfly. The damselfly is still more thin, and they have longer cerci. A fun fact about these guys as a water stage is that they breathe out of their butts. They have like anal, they have anal gills, and that's how they breathe. And you can see a good image here of a dragonfly eating minnow. So they're very good predators of even things like small fish. And you can see his mouth parts here. They lay underneath, and then they act as arms when prey gets near. So they come out and they reach and grab it to eat it. So I don't know, that's pretty cool. So I want to talk about now arthropods' impacts on society. So arthropods, because of how prolific they are, you'd have to assume that they impact society somewhat. But they impact society a lot more than you think. They go as far as how we determine our wars, how we fight battles within our wars, how we believe our cultures, our customs, our cars, our movies. I mean, who saw the recent Spider-Man movie? Again, a lot of things are impacted by arthropods. The ancient Egyptians believed that the scarab beetle was representative of the god of the sun, because of how the scarab beetle, which is a dung beetle, would roll the dung across the desert, was representative of how the god of the sun would roll the sun across the desert sky. In the Bible, it is mentioned like 120 times. Insects are in the New King James Version, which most of the time they're referencing to locusts, and it's not in a positive light, but still it's an impact on how we live our lives. Movies, again, Spider-Man just came out, so it's fresh on the mind, but we also have Godzilla and Mothra. I recommend watching The Mimic. It's a really good movie, and The Fly is a really good movie, inspired by arthropods. And lastly is Mothman. I have never heard of Mothman before moving here, but apparently it's a very big thing in the South, and it has been located in Louisiana before, so keep your eyes out. You never know if you might find a Mothman. How society impacts arthropods, however, is not as bright. So I'm specifically talking about firefly decline, because fireflies are an indicator species. If you have fireflies in your area, that's typically an indicator that you have a lot of other arthropods in good diversity and a good ecosystem within your area. Fireflies, however, have been on the decline due to urbanization, which is loss of habitat. Light pollution affects them because of communication. And this also impacts every other species of insects. And the big one is pesticide use, obviously. Pesticides knock out a lot of our beneficial insects, unfortunately. Speaking of pesticides, I'm from Kansas. I'm an agricultural person. I study pesticides. I will never tell anyone that they should never use a pesticide ever again. But they're a necessary evil. And with the rise of insecticide resistance, it's more important than ever that we study them further in order to make a more species-specific version of these pesticides. But there's other methods to do besides using pesticides that should come first. First of all is the power of prediction. So these bottom two are what we do before pests arrive. Crop rotations, BT crops, which are resistant plants that are genetically modified. They're good agronomic practices in order to prevent pests from eating your plants, whatever it is that you're growing. The next one before pests arrive would be predicting. So monitoring what's coming into your area, knowing what can affect you, and making sure that you are doing everything that you need to do before they might get here. Once they do get here, mechanical and physical control is the first option. If you have a garden, that can just be removing manually insects from your garden, or using a vacuum. A vacuum is a great tool that people don't think of getting insects off of your plants. But for larger practices, burning is a typical method. If you have a very large infestation and your crops are being ruined anyways, burning it is the way to stop the spread. There's also natural pesticides and horticultural soaps. Essential oils have been studied before for having being able to kill pests. The last one to talk about before we get to pesticides would be other organisms. So using biological control, such as what we talked about with the parasitic wasps, but also ladybugs are used for aphids. There's a lot of different species that can be used in order to control insects besides pesticides. So what I'm going to leave us with is how to study this further. So all of you know, I want to be entomologists now because it's such an interesting world to discover. There's so much to see and so much to learn. The biggest one I would suggest is being a part of the Entomological Society of America. They have annual meetings on in the fall for the national conferences, and in the spring they have more close related areas, branch meetings. The American Arachnological Society, they post a lot of things about spiders and other arachnids if you're curious more about arachnids. The Xerces Society does a lot of posts about conservation efforts and new studies for conservation. If you are looking to identify insects, I recommend using iNaturalist, which is where you take a photo and you can identify it. If you are not able to use iNaturalist because it can kind of be confusing, you can also, if you have an iPhone, just take a picture of the insect that you have, and then it will tell you in the details section. It'll give you a pretty accurate description as to what the insect is, and then from there, you can figure it out a little bit more closely. If you're not a tech person, field guides are going to be your best friend. So these are ones that you can flip open. You can figure out what you're looking at from there. Bug guide is great for once you know what your species is, to figure out a little bit more about the species, a little bit more of the ecology. I recommend that as well. And then obviously the LSU Ag Center, there is a lot of great resources to use. You can obviously contact us at any point to ask questions. There's Dr. Aaron Ashbrook, who does little videos. Bug Biz is posted on Ag Center, as well as a pest management guide. I as well recommend just using YouTube if you're genuinely curious about like taxonomy or about specific groups of insects. I use a lot of YouTube to figure out a lot of my information. So that's always a great use of the internet. So I have my resources up here. I use most of these. These are easy reads and they're great to find more information. So I'm going to give you guys a few seconds. I have 2 slides of resources that I would love for you to take pictures of in order to research further into all of these amazing arthropods so you can learn more on your own. All right, I'll give you till the count of 15 for each slide, okay? All right, next one. All right. Let me know if you guys didn't get that. I can always go back. But thank you guys for listening to this awesome talk. I had a lot of fun making it. And again, this is what I enjoy the most out of being a scientist, is being able to talk to people. So this is my contact. Please feel free to reach out anytime you have any questions. I'll be happy to try and answer the best I can or connect you with people that can answer your questions. So with that, I'm willing to open the floor for any questions you guys might have. Let me. Oh, thank you guys.
I have a really simple question.
Yes, of course.
So when you go looking for reptiles and amphibians, you call it herping. You go look for plants, you call it botanizing. What do you call, or maybe what's the industry term for going out and looking for bugs and arthropods and whatnot?
You know, I honestly do not know that answer. That is a great question. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those people that goes out searching, so I don't really know if I know the terminology, but I can definitely look that up for you if you wanna ask me that later or Googling it somehow. But I don't know. That is a great question.
Well, we have a local beetle expert, and he calls it bugging.
Bugging. That's a good that's very catchy. I like that. I mean,
But I was
I
just
suppose
curious if,
if you're doing it for crustaceans, you have to call it fishing, but
sure,
I don't know.
yeah.
That is a very good question.
I think entomologizing is not really catchy.
Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue. Here, let me Google.
So, Gillian,
Mhm.
type of question. First of
Yes.
all, that was a very good talk.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So, about the brown recluse, did you say that they were scavengers that would eat dead things?
Yes. So they're typically known to be scavenging around the areas looking for things to eat that way. So
Why do you think they need venom then?
it's mostly used as a defense. They also probably do a little bit of predatory work, especially when resources are low. But typically, it has been more so seen that they are used as scavengers. Again, venom is not only for the purposes of hunting; it's used to scare off things that can get it. And they are technically medically important, but they're not as medically important as I think people want to believe.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for your question.
Right. I have a question, Gillian. How would
Yes.
we make our yards more insect friendly?
How do you make your yard more insect friendly? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah. So it's very dry at the moment, and
Yes.
it seems a harsh environment.
Yeah, it is. It is a dry summer right now, which is crazy for me to say because in Kansas, this is a lot of rain for little Kansas me. But they the way that I would suggest is by replacing lawns. That's probably the first way I would go is just replacing your grass lawn with possibly clover or native grasses because most of the time the grasses that you're seeing are Bermuda grass, which is not a native grass, as well as getting a native flowers. I don't know native flowers for Louisiana off the top of my head, but milkweed is always a good one to have around. There's lots of different species of milkweed to choose from.
Yeah.
Just having a lot of flowers, a lot of natural area, trying to not be as on top of your lawn mowing as you may want to be allows for a lot of creatures to crawl between the grasses. Also, leaving your leaves out. People don't think of this, but because every time you're thinking of insects, you're thinking of the spring and the summertime when they come out. But during the fall and the winter time when it's cold, they need those leaves to hide underneath and to keep themselves warm, especially with ladybugs do that. A lot of spider species do that. A lot of species just in general are burying themselves under leaf litter as a way to hide themselves. So not having as much upkeep on your yard is just a very simple way to make sure that your yards are a little bit more insect friendly. Not spraying pesticides, having a garden that has a good mix of, as much as we don't want pests in our garden, having a good mix of pests is what allows for our other insects to feed. So that's a good way to do it as well. There's lots of ways in order to make your yard a little bit more insect friendly and have a lot more insects within your yard.
Good. Thank you very much. Great answer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gillian.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, here's another question. Sorry to follow so hard on the other one.
Oh, you're
But
fine.
I seem to have seen less pollinators this year. In
Yeah.
fact, I've grown more flowers this year, but there's been far less action. I see the predators, like the mantises and some assassin bugs and things, but I just don't see the pollinators.
Yes. I don't know the specific answer to that question, but if I had to take a guess on a whim, it's because pollinators typically have higher, they die faster because of pesticides than our pest insects do. Because obviously we're spraying our yards and our ag practices for these pests, so they've had more time to develop a resistance, in my opinion. Again, there's not really a straightforward answer to that question. And again, my experience has failed me because molecular biology is more so where my experience lies, but I do enjoy that question. I will make sure that I ask some people. We have a great pollinator lab within LSU Ag Center, so I'll make sure I reach out and I'll get that answer for you, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill.
Yeah.
What? So I just have an answer, or maybe it's a discussion. I don't know about the pollinators. I find that interesting that you say that, because I have more pollinators this year in my garden.
Huh.
Oh, good. I'm glad
And
to hear it.
I think it's I have planted a lot of like this native mint. I think it's called mountain mint, and that attracts like a lot of bees and pollinators. And then my neighbor has a vitex bush, and that also seems to really attract a lot. And also I planted like zinnia, have many different colors, and I think it's just more about what I plant.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
It also could be, Charles, that you're seeing pollinators, but you don't recognize them as pollinators, because a lot of species that we know, like, oh, bees, even some people just already know about the wasp thing, but there's other species than what we are used to seeing that are pollinators. So you might be seeing them without knowing you're seeing them.
Right. Yes. There are
There's also
more
nighttime
wasps.
pollinators.
Oh, good. Yes. Yeah.
So it just, again, there's not really a straightforward answer, because entomology is, again, combining so many different things that can lead to the decline or increase of these species. So there's a lot to think of on that question. Again, let me write that down to reach out about the decrease in pollinators in some people's yards and increase in others.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can answer for you guys? Oh, also to answer what the catching of insects is either insect collecting, bug hunting, or entomologizing, which is not roll off the tongue. So unfortunately, we don't have a cool name for it. I like bugging a lot better.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh, if you don't want people to spray around your yard or dose your land, what's the best strategy of keeping your land free of pesticides?
I'm not sure how it works in Louisiana. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to say, like, oh, in my yard, I don't want any pesticides, because pesticides travel by the air quite frequently. You could possibly reach out to, I don't know exactly, like, if you're in like an ag area, but if you're in an ag area, you can maybe reach out to different farmers to see what pesticides they are using, and that way you have that information on the fly. I know that they do a lot of like mosquito control efforts within like more urbanized areas.
Yeah.
You can probably tell them not to spray on your property if it's for the mosquito control people. I'm not experienced in Louisiana's pest control, but again, that's another question I can definitely reach out and ask for you if you would like.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Right. I'd like to say on behalf of the LMNA, thank you very much, Gillian, for your excellent presentation. It's
Thank
been
you so
very
much.
interesting and wonderful, truly wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, and if you guys would like the presentation, I can send that to you guys to send out to whoever if other people want to see it. Obviously, you guys have the YouTube as well, so just let me know if you guys need anything at all. Again, don't hesitate to reach out if you all want any answers to anything.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you. And I will edit some of the sound, where there were a few little interruptions. I'll see if I can edit the video before I put it up onto the YouTube channel.
Okay.
And
Do you know about when they will be posted? Some of my family wants to watch.
oh, yes. Well, this very evening, I'll have a crack at the video editing,
Okay.
and I'll go for an upload before I go to bed tonight.
All right. Thank you so much, Charles, for, again, this was an amazing opportunity. You guys were a great group to present to, and great welcome into Louisiana. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you all
All
for
right.
joining us.
Yes, thank you guys. All right. I'm going to go ahead and hop off here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very good.
Have a great rest of your guys' evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.